Right, so Keir Starmer's Labour have made a lot of humanitarian pauses being the way forward. A charge led by US foreign policy, not one of Starmer's own. It's a case of Joe Biden says jump and Starmer says how high. But last month, a group of lawyers led by Michelle Farrell, a professor of law at Liverpool University, wrote to Starmer and Co asking for clarification on Labour's position on collective punishment, forcible transfer and war crimes. Basically, if they're going to be so ardently pro-Israel and excusing what that country is doing, the mounting evidence on all of these aspects of international law being broken as they are, how is Labour justifying it? How is Labour upholding international law as it says it does, as its amendment to the King's speech says it does, and says it is committed to in light of what Israel is doing? Well, we've had a response, and various aspects of that response from Team Keith have left the lawyers with feelings of profound concern. Right, so an array of legal experts have written to Keir Starmer, to Labour, wanting to know what legal justification they have for supporting Israel in the manner they do, if they are also apparently upholding international law as they do so. Because we've seen numerous instances of collective punishment. Indeed, Starmer himself said Israel had a right to do that, didn't he? Cutting off the water and the power to Gaza before denying he ever said it, and has never apologised for it. That'd be beneath him, such is his arrogance. Israel have forced the evacuation of the northern half of the Gaza Strip, demanding people move south, and those who couldn't have been targeted by the IDF. That forcible transfer, also a violation of international law. Indeed, the targeting thereafter of refugee camps, hospitals, schools, all protected under international law has happened as well. We've seen the footage. The list of war crimes being committed by Israel in Gaza is growing, and all Starmer can ever say is that Israel has a right to defend itself. But this isn't self-defence. This is aggression and violation of the laws in place to protect such institutions. And if you aren't calling that out, if you aren't acting to bring that to an end, then you're complicit too. Then you're part of the problem. And how the voting goes in the King's speech and on those amendments will tell us who is choosing to be complicit and who is actually prepared to stand up and uphold international law. Because one person who surely won't be doing that is the former human rights lawyer Keir Starmer himself, who has put to bed any notion now surely of being on the side of human rights here, and certainly will have after he votes down any amendment that calls for a ceasefire tonight. The response Labour gave to Michelle Farrell and the other assorted lawyers involved, quite a number of them who have signed this statement they have issued in response to what Labour told them. The response they received of profound concern to them. The statement reads, "Dear Sir Keir Starmer, we the undersigned wrote to you on the 17th and 25th of October calling on you to clarify Labour's position on collective punishment and forcible transfer and to oppose and condemn the commission of war crimes. Our letter was prompted by numerous statements from you and senior members of your shadow cabinet, which appeared to suggest that Labour either did not understand the international law governing Israel's conduct or was unwilling, for political reasons, to publicly support fundamental principles of international law. On the 10th of November, we received a response from the Labour Party. Various aspects of the response are of profound concern. Most worrying in Labour's response to our letters was the lack of understanding of international law. The response states that collective punishment under international law is considered a war crime as per Article 33 of the Geneva Conventions 1949, to which Britain is a signatory. This is inaccurate. The collective punishment of civilians is prohibited under Article 33 of the 4th Geneva Convention and under Article 75 Part 2D, Additional Protocol 1. States are unequivocally bound by the prohibition of collective punishment. Any form of collective punishment amounts to an internationally wrongful act. And as we pointed out in both letters, the imposition of collective punishment is likely to be considered a war crime under customary international law. Also, as it stands, it is the United Kingdom and not Britain that approves international treaties. This may seem like a technicality, but in the midst of an international crisis of this scale, and given Israel's statements, it is imperative that the Labour Party understands international law and understands the gravity of its position on collective punishment and on forcible transfer. As regards collective punishment, Israeli officials made their intentions clear. The Minister of Defence, Yoav Gallant, announced a complete siege of Gaza, said there will be no electricity, no food, no fuel, everything is closed. We are fighting human animals and we are acting accordingly. A spokesperson for the Israeli military said that the emphasis was on damage and not accuracy, and another official stated that creating a severe humanitarian crisis in Gaza is a necessary means to achieve the goal. The Minister for Energy stated there will be no electricity, water or fuel until the Israeli abductees are returned home. You are, we are sure, well aware of the humanitarian crisis that Israel has since imposed through the siege of Gaza. The International Committee of the Red Cross, amongst others, have described both the complete siege of Gaza and the evacuation order as incompatible with international law. It is worth noting that 2 joint letters from over 40 UK academics with expertise in international law merits a formal response from the Labour Party. Why then was the response not checked for legal accuracy, and why was such fundamental legal issue given such cursory treatment? The role of the opposition, the response to our letters also states that Labour's position must be in line with Britain's global allies, namely the United States of America and the European Union. In this regard, it behooves us to remind you that it is the job of His Majesty's opposition to hold the government of the United Kingdom to account, not to follow policy lines of foreign governments. The legal obligations of the UK government should not be in doubt. Common Article 1 of the 4 Geneva Conventions requires state parties to respect and to ensure respect for the conventions. We would also like to remind you that the United Kingdom has ratified the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. As confirmed by the International Council of Justice in 2020, all states have an obligation to prevent acts of genocide, irrespective of where they occur. In light of the mounting and compelling evidence of genocide, as affirmed by UN experts and scholars of genocide, the United Kingdom can adhere to its obligations under the Genocide Convention by calling for an immediate ceasefire, an end to the siege and an end to the forced displacement of Palestinians. In your closing paragraph, your colleague thanks us for the chance for the Labour Party to reiterate its commitment to international law. However, this meagre and inaccurate response to our specific questions seems to reflect Labour's lack of commitment to international law. The authority of international law, and the international humanitarian law in particular, is fundamentally undermined when its invocation amounts to no more than a political soundbite. If the Labour Party is serious about the potential of international law to settle international disputes and to reduce suffering and armed conflict, it must aspire to invoke its terms accurately and responsibly in order to encourage compliance. We therefore ask what legal advice the Labour Party has sought on the international legal framework governing Israel's conduct in the aftermath of the Hamas atrocities of the 7th of October, which, in addition to prima facie violations of international humanitarian law in Gaza, including war crimes, has included apparent war crimes in the West Bank, where Hamas does not exercise any control. We also write to urge you to ensure that all Labour MPs are fully informed of the UK government's legal obligation to call for a ceasefire in advance of any parliamentary vote. We look forward to your response to this letter. Now, I appreciate that was lengthy. I hope you stayed with me for it, because every bit of that was damning, and actually a lot of it can be aimed at the Tories too. Short of calling for a ceasefire at the end of the day, the government and the opposition, by following the foreign policy of Joe Biden, are themselves not upholding international law and not upholding treaties they're signatories of. All they do is talk about it because it sounds good. They don't actually uphold any of it. In fact, from Labour's perspective, they don't even seem to understand it, not having sufficient enough grip on the Geneva Conventions, of all things, that should be amongst the most basic and first aspects of law that any minister, especially one involved in foreign policy, should be involved with. To quote the right aspects of it, they couldn't do it, or even acknowledge the amendments made to it since the original conventions were originally ratified back in 1948-49. Their response to Labour has listed multiple examples of where international law is not being upheld by Israel, yet neither the government nor the Labour opposition are calling that out. In fact, added to that is the inference by reference to a meagre or inaccurate response. They not only don't appear to understand it, but also don't seem to care either. It's also worth mentioning that Emily Thornberry, also a lawyer, was copied into this response to Labour, so it's not just a shot across Starmer's bows as an apparent human rights lawyer, clearly not in possession of anything like the aptitude for the law his past over-promotion would have you believe otherwise, but similarly Thornberry gets called out too. And after going on TV and backing Starmer's narrative to the hilt, she's tarred herself with the same brush. Labour have been invited to reply to this. Whether they do or not remains to be seen, but I'll be very interested to see what they have to say if they do. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Please do have your say on this in the comments below and be part of the conversation. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation where Starmer's recent speech at Chatham House exposed more of his ceasefire ignorance and stupidity. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.